Everything that has ever changed the world started with something breaking. An idea that didn't work. A system that collapsed. Person who failed. We tend to fear that moment. The crash, the silence, the uncertainty. But in truth, it's where the real work begins. When things fall apart, you're forced to look deeper. You start to see the flaws in the design, the weaknesses in your thinking, and the patterns that held you back. Breaking is uncomfortable, but it's also honest. It's the point where illusion fades and reality steps forward. Failure is not an ending. It's a necessary checkpoint on the path to progress. Most people treat failure as a closed door, a signal that the dream wasn't meant to be, that their idea wasn't good enough, or that they themselves lacked something essential. But that's not how progress works. Every major leap in science, technology, or personal growth has always passed through the valley of failure. It's not a detour from success. It's the road itself. Failure is how the universe tests whether you're serious about what you claim to want. It strips away illusions, laziness, and wishful thinking, leaving behind only the person who is willing to rebuild. The moment you fall short is not a sign that you're done. It's a sign that you've reached the boundary of what you currently understand, and that's where learning truly begins. The concept of failure as a checkpoint changes everything. It means that every setback holds within it a kind of progress report. You see where your design cracked, where your assumptions failed, where your planning was shallow. This data becomes priceless if you choose to analyze it instead of avoiding it. Failure has a brutal honesty that success rarely provides. When things work perfectly, you don't ask why, you just celebrate. But when they fail, you're forced to look closer, to question every detail, to uncover hidden truths that could make the next attempt unbreakable. This process of reflection and adjustment is the essence of innovation. Progress doesn't happen because everything goes right. It happens because someone refused to stop when everything went wrong. When you start seeing failure as a checkpoint rather than a dead end, you release yourself from the fear that paralyzes so many dreamers. You stop asking, "What if I fail?" and start asking, "What will I learn when I do?" That single shift in mindset transforms fear into fuel. It makes you experiment, take risks, and move faster because you understand that perfection isn't required. Persistence is. Every failed attempt becomes a small evolution in understanding. It's not about luck or genius. It's about patience and resilience. The ones who reach extraordinary success are simply the ones who kept arriving at their checkpoints, gathering information, adapting, and moving forward again. Failure, then, becomes a necessary rhythm of creation, an essential calibration between vision and reality. It's not an interruption of progress, but a continuation of it in its most honest form. Every time you fail, something inside you recalibrates, refines, and rebuilds. It's life's way of teaching you the rules of mastery, one broken attempt at a time. Every collapse holds valuable data that success often hides. When something goes wrong, when the plan shatters and the outcome slips away, there's a clarity that rises from the wreckage. In success, everything feels smooth and certain, but in that comfort, we rarely stop to question why things worked. Failure, on the other hand, exposes the structure beneath the surface. It forces you to see what was weak, what was missing, what wasn't ready. That information is gold, not because it feels good, but because it reveals truth. Failure doesn't lie. It doesn't flatter your ego or protect your illusions. It tells you exactly where your limits are and dares you to expand them. When you win, your vision becomes narrow. You assume the formula is perfect, so you repeat it. You stop learning because success gives you the illusion of control. But when you fail, that illusion breaks, and what's left is reality in its purest form. The broken pieces tell you how things really work, the physics of effort, the psychology of endurance, the flaws in your design, the gaps in your understanding. Failure brings you face to face with reality, and that confrontation is where growth begins. Every great creator, innovator, or leader has understood this simple truth. There's more to learn from one honest failure than from 100 easy victories. In the chaos of something falling apart, your mind sharpens. You observe more, you think deeper, you question your process. You start collecting data, emotional, strategic, personal. You begin to notice patterns you ignored before. Maybe your timing was off, maybe your approach was too comfortable, Maybe you were chasing validation instead of purpose. All those realizations are invisible when things are going well, but they become painfully clear when you fail. That pain is awareness. That awareness is data. It's the kind of information that doesn't come from books or theories. It comes from experience. The irony of success is that it can make you blind, while failure restores your sight. The collapse you fear is often the very thing that will show you what needs to change. Every failed attempt is an X-ray of your ambition, showing you where the structure is solid and where it's fragile. It's not something to escape. It's something to examine. When you start treating every fall as an experiment, every loss as a data point, you stop being emotional about failure and start becoming scientific about it. You realize that behind every broken attempt lies insight, and that insight, gathered over time, becomes the architecture of eventual success. Innovation demands breaking old systems, limits, and versions of yourself. Nothing truly new is ever created without something first being destroyed. The world resists change because stability feels safe, but progress has never been born from comfort. Every breakthrough begins with disruption, an idea that challenges what already exists, a risk that overturns predictability, a person willing to question everything that others accepted as truth. Innovation isn't about adding more. It's about daring to dismantle what no longer serves you. To build something extraordinary, you must first unbuild the version of yourself that was built for survival, not creation. That process is uncomfortable, but it's also necessary. Growth and innovation demand that you leave behind the identity that once protected you but now limits you. When you hold on to the old beliefs, systems, or habits, you're holding on to the very walls that keep you from expanding. Innovation lives in uncertainty, in the moments when you admit you don't have all the answers. That's when creativity begins to operate freely. It's the willingness to break patterns that opens the space for new patterns to emerge. When you let go of what's familiar, you make room for what's possible. This is why so many revolutionary ideas come from failure or frustration, because something stops working. The breakdown forces the breakthrough. The moment you realize the old system can't carry you further, you're forced to build something new, something better, something truer. Breaking your own limits means questioning the narratives you've lived by, the assumptions about what you can and can't do. It requires brutal honesty. It requires humility to admit that the current version of you is incomplete. Innovation is not just external. It's deeply personal. Before you can reinvent the world around you, you must reinvent the world within you. You have to break the routines that keep you predictable, the doubts that keep you safe, and the comfort that keeps you stagnant. Every invention that changed the course of humanity started with someone who was willing to fail publicly, to be misunderstood, and to rebuild from zero. That's what breaking truly means, choosing evolution over ease. Innovation isn't just about creating new things. It's about creating new possibilities of thinking. Every time you destroy an outdated version of yourself, you make space for a higher one to rise. The world around you changes when you stop protecting what was and start exploring what could be. To innovate is to break with courage, not to abandon what existed, but to honor it by building something greater from its remains. Discomfort is proof that you're evolving beyond your comfort zone. Every time you feel resistance, uncertainty, or fear, it's not a sign that you're failing. It's a signal that you're growing. The mind and body are wired to protect what's familiar because safety feels like control, but comfort rarely creates change. Progress is built on the edges of discomfort, where the old patterns start to crack and new possibilities begin to appear. That uneasy feeling you get when you take a risk or enter unfamiliar territory is not a warning to stop. It's an invitation to transform. Every significant evolution in your life has been preceded by a moment of unease, where the world felt unstable and you had to adapt. Growth is not supposed to feel comfortable. It's supposed to stretch you until you no longer fit the person you used to be. When you step outside your comfort zone, you enter the territory where real learning happens. Mistakes, embarrassment, rejection. These are not failures. They are proof that you're pushing past your limits. People often wait until they feel ready before they act, but readiness is an illusion. You don't grow by preparing for discomfort. You grow by walking through it. The path to mastery is paved with awkward beginnings, uncertain steps, and the kind of frustration that teaches discipline. Those moments of discomfort shape your perspective, your resilience, and your understanding of what's possible. Every time you endure something difficult, you gain strength that comfort could never give you. Discomfort is the language of transformation. It's the friction that forges new character, the tension that builds endurance, the heat that refines potential into skill. When you start to associate discomfort with progress, your relationship with challenge changes. You stop running from it and start seeking it. You begin to understand that comfort is not peace. It's stagnation disguised as safety. The longer you stay within what's familiar, the more predictable your life becomes, and predictability is the death of potential. To evolve, you have to willingly place yourself in situations that demand more from you than you think you can give. The most transformative people in history didn't wait for comfort to find them. They walked straight into discomfort and learned to breathe there. The moment you stop fearing it, you start mastering it. Discomfort teaches you adaptability, patience, and courage. It reminds you that growth doesn't happen in the moments you feel confident, but in the moments you feel uncertain. That tension, that pressure, that stretch, that's where evolution begins. The process of breaking refines vision. It removes illusion and exposes truth. When everything is working smoothly, it's easy to believe that you understand the path ahead. But success often clouds clarity. It makes you comfortable, and comfort breeds blindness. You stop questioning your direction, your purpose, and your method because everything seems fine. But when something breaks, when the plan collapses or the outcome fails to match your expectations, the illusion shatters. You are forced to see things as they are, not as you wish them to be. In that raw moment of failure, vision becomes sharper. It's like wiping fog off a glass. Suddenly, you can see the details that were always there but hidden by comfort and assumption. Breaking is painful because it removes the stories we tell ourselves about how capable, prepared, or right we are. Yet that pain is what sharpens understanding. It forces you to look beyond ego and face what is real. When something falls apart, you're given the opportunity to reassess your motives and direction. Maybe what you were building wasn't aligned with who you truly are. Maybe you were chasing validation, not purpose. Maybe your foundation wasn't strong enough to carry the weight of your ambition. These truths only reveal themselves when things stop working. The breaking process strips away noise and distraction until all that remains is what matters. It's uncomfortable, but it's also the birthplace of precision and depth. When you fail, you learn to see with humility. You start paying attention to the smallest details, to the warning signs you once ignored, to the quiet voice that told you to slow down. Vision becomes disciplined. You no longer rely on blind optimism. You rely on understanding. Breaking teaches discernment, the ability to distinguish between what's essential and what's unnecessary. It turns vague dreams into grounded purpose. The very act of rebuilding after a fall forces you to design more carefully, to think more deeply, to act with more clarity. Each failure removes a layer of illusion until your vision is refined to its core. The truth is, breaking doesn't blur your direction. It focuses it. It's the friction that cleans the lens of your perception. Once you've seen what went wrong, you carry that awareness into everything you create afterward. You stop guessing and start seeing. That's why some of the most visionary minds emerge from repeated failure. They've learned to let breaking refine their sight, not destroy their spirit. Success is not about avoiding pain. It's about extracting meaning from it. Every great journey involves suffering, and every achievement demands some form of sacrifice. Pain is not the enemy. It's the instructor that life assigns to teach what comfort cannot. When things go wrong, when rejection hits, when plans crumble, most people only see loss. But those who rise again understand that pain always carries information. It tells you what needs to change, what deserves your energy, and what boundaries you must outgrow. Instead of running from pain, they study it. They listen to it. Because buried inside every painful experience is a hidden message about who you truly are and what you are capable of becoming. Avoiding pain doesn't lead to peace. It leads to weakness. Growth requires friction, and friction always burns a little. The person who avoids struggle also avoids transformation. Pain shapes the mind the way pressure shapes stone. Compresses you, forces you to focus, and refines your strength. Without it, your potential remains dormant. Every failure, every heartbreak, every disappointment acts like a sculptor, carving away everything that doesn't belong to your higher purpose. You learn discipline through fatigue, resilience through loss, and clarity through heartbreak. Pain is the process through which the raw becomes refined. You don't escape it, you evolve through it. The difference between those who collapse under pain and those who grow from it lies in interpretation. If you treat pain as punishment, you resist it. If you treat it as information, you learn from it. When you start seeing pain as a signal rather than a sentence, your perspective changes. You begin to understand that pain isn't trying to destroy you. It's trying to redirect you. It's showing you that something about your method, your mindset, or your environment is misaligned with your growth. By extracting meaning from it, you turn suffering into wisdom. The more meaning you find, the less control pain has over you. Pain gives depth to your character and authenticity to your vision, connects you to others, and keeps you grounded when success finally comes. You can't fake wisdom that was earned through struggle. It's felt in your presence, seen in your choices, and reflected in your calmness. Every scar becomes a note in your story, every setback a piece of your strength. The path to greatness isn't free from pain. It's defined by how well you translate it into purpose. Every broken piece of effort becomes a foundation for a stronger rebuild. When something you worked for collapses, it doesn't vanish, it transforms. The lessons, the discipline, the small improvements you made along the way remain, even if the result disappears. Failure is not a reset to zero. It's a restructuring of knowledge and resilience. Every attempt, no matter how unsuccessful, adds a new layer of understanding. What you build after a fall is never from scratch. It's from experience. Each broken piece of effort, every wrong turn, and every painful ending becomes part of the architecture that holds up your future. You become stronger not because you avoid falling, but because you keep using what you've learned to rebuild something better. When you look closely at any successful person or powerful idea, you can trace it back to a series of failures that shaped it. The strength of a structure doesn't come from its first draft, but from how many times it has been tested, redesigned, and reinforced. The same applies to people. Every setback reveals where your foundation is weak, where your discipline falters, and where your belief wavers. By facing those weak points, you rebuild not just your projects but your inner framework. You learn to construct yourself in a way that can handle more weight, more pressure, and more responsibility. The cracks of your past are not flaws. They're reinforcements, reminders that you've already survived what once broke you. Rebuilding after failure demands patience and awareness. It requires you to look at your broken pieces not with regret but with curiosity. Instead of asking why things fell apart, you start asking what they're teaching you. Every mistake becomes a blueprint for improvement, and every disappointment becomes motivation to refine your design. Over time, this process makes you unshakable. You start to realize that nothing you've been through was wasted. It all added depth to your vision and strength to your will. Even when life dismantles your plans, it leaves behind the materials needed for something greater. The beauty of rebuilding lies in the transformation of meaning. What once symbolized defeat becomes evidence of endurance. What once felt like destruction becomes the foundation for growth. You learn to trust the process of breaking because you've witnessed how it leads to renewal. The effort that once failed is never lost. It's recycled into the wisdom, precision, and courage that define your next rise. Each time you rebuild, you're not returning to where you were. You're constructing from a higher level, using every fallen piece as proof that you cannot be destroyed, only redesigned. The most remarkable transformations begin where certainty ends. Certainty feels safe, but it also keeps you trapped inside what you already know. Growth doesn't happen in the familiar. It happens when you step into the unknown and let go of control. When you stop needing guarantees and start trusting the process, you begin to access parts of yourself that comfort kept hidden. Certainty gives structure, but uncertainty gives possibility. The moment you enter a space where you no longer have all the answers, your mind becomes alive again. You start observing, adapting, and creating in ways you never thought possible. The loss of certainty is not chaos. It's the birthplace of innovation and self-discovery. Every great transformation begins with the courage to move forward without a map. People often chase security because they fear the void that uncertainty creates, but that void is where reinvention happens. When life stops making sense, when your plans collapse, or when the path disappears, you're given a rare opportunity to rebuild with awareness. You begin to see that certainty was never the goal, evolution was. The most extraordinary people aren't those who knew exactly how things would turn out. They're the ones who kept walking even when the ground beneath them was still forming. In uncertainty, you learn flexibility, creativity, and resilience. You discover how to rely on your instincts, your adaptability, and your faith in the unseen. Those qualities can't be built in safety. They're forged in the spaces where you have no choice but to grow. Certainty limits you to what already exists, but uncertainty opens the door to what could exist. Every invention, every personal breakthrough, every shift in consciousness has come from someone daring to question the known. When you let go of the need to predict every outcome, you give yourself permission to explore. That exploration leads to wisdom that comfort will never provide. You start to see uncertainty not as a threat but as a teacher, one that challenges you to evolve faster than your fear. The moments when you feel lost are not failures. They are recalibrations, guiding you toward the next version of yourself. Transformation requires surrender. You can't grow while clinging to what's predictable. You have to let the unknown stretch you, test you, and rebuild you. When certainty ends, imagination begins. That's where the magic hides. Not in the answers, but in the courage to keep asking questions when nothing feels sure. The greatest transformations don't come from knowing. They come from daring to continue despite not knowing at all.